A nice way to enhance the animatics that you create in Toon Boom Storyboard Pro is to use animating layer effects. An important thing to keep in mind is that Toon Boom will animate a layer rather than a specific object. So if there's something like this bird that I'm going to want to animate throughout this scene, you want to make sure that that object is on its own layer, and I recommend that you give that layer a name just because it'll help you keep track of what you're doing throughout the process. When you're animating layers, just like anything else that involves animatics, you'll want to make sure that you're working in the timeline workspace, which you can find up here with that musical note. So I'll click that, and that will give me access to the timeline down here, which we'll be using quite a bit in this process. To animate a layer, the first thing I'll do is to click on the layer that I want to animate, selecting that, and then I'll go over here to my toolbar, and in the toolbar you'll see these tools. One is called the first frame tool and the last frame tool, and so these are the tools that we're going to use to transform the layer, to animate the layer. And so here is my panel down here in the timeline, and now I'm going to come up here to the first frame tool and click on that, and then you'll see that my layer object is highlighted, and I will determine where I want him to appear in the first frame of this panel. So I can move him anywhere I want to, and in this case I'm going to move him outside of the frame so that he could come flying into the frame and through from the first panel to the last panel. So I've chosen him outside the frame. I'm going to zoom out a little bit right now so that you can see I have the layer mask on, but if I click off the layer mask, then I can see what's going on behind the scenes. So now I'm going to choose the last frame. I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to reposition my layer object to where I want him to be in the last frame. And so now if I go over to my timeline and I scrub through, I can go from first frame all the way to the last frame of this panel, and I can see what that looks like. I can also come over here to my toolbar. It's the playback toolbar, and in this case I want to just play this selected panel. So I'm going to hit play selection, and as I do, from the beginning it's going to show me what the selection looks like and what the speed looks like. You can control the speed by basically controlling the duration of the panel. If I make the panel shorter in time by dragging it to have a shorter duration, then when I play it, it is going to fly through much faster. And if I want to loop that so I can see it over and over again, I will press this button, the loop button on the playhead, and then press the play selection button, and then I can see it fly through. Well, that is way too fast, so I'm going to stop that, and I'm just going to change the duration of the panel, play it again until I like the way that it looks, and that's the most simple way to animate a layer. You can do more than just change the location and the position of the object with these tools. For example, I'm going to change the size as well. In this case, I'm going to start the transformation with the bird looking small, and once again I'll put him outside the frame, maybe a little bit lower, and then I'll use the last frame tool to click on this and transform him to be even larger by the time that he exits the frame. And I can even change the rotation a little bit on him. And so let's see what effect that has. I'm going to just scrub through my timeline, and now you can transform in size as well as in position. So let me just play that for you. It's got a nice look to it. And of course, where he is, in this case behind the pirate, is going to be determined by where the layer is in your stack of layers over here. Now it just so happens that this scene that I'm working on has two panels. I have the bird flying through, and then I have the pirate saying something to camera. Now in this case though, what if I'd like to have that bird fly through both panels? Well, in that case I can use something called spread layer motion. So once again I'm going to click on the layer that I'm transforming. That's very important. And then I could come up to layer and go over to spread layer motion, which is down here. I'll click on that and I get a dialog box that says I can spread this motion into the panels within the same scene, and I'm going to choose the target essentially. I'm going to say I want him to fly through all the panels in the same scene, or if I had a bunch of different panels I could tell it how many. So I'm going to press OK. So now I'm going to grab my playhead and scrub through and see as I drag it through that now that same layer motion has been spread over both panels within the scene. If you decide you no longer want to have that layer animating, all you need to do is come over, make sure that your layer is selected, and go over to layer and then reset transform. And now that transformation is no longer going to happen in that panel. There are some options that can make your layer animations look even better. So right now we have our bird flying through the scene. I'm going to play that on a loop so we can see, but it looks a little bit mechanical because he's flying through at a constant rate. So there are choices when you go into the tool properties that will let you ease in and ease out, or to hold a start position or to hold an end position. So once again, make sure that the layer that you're working on is selected, and make sure that your first frame or your last frame tool is selected. So if we want to ease into this scene, if we want the bird to fly in slowly and then speed up as he gets closer to us, which would be more natural, I can go over to ease in, and I can select in there and click up here the amount of frames that I want to have him ease into this motion. So he'll go a little slower at the beginning. So there's 10 frames where he'll ease in before he gets to full speed. So now that I've done that, I'm going to press play selected, and you can see that he starts in slow. But if I don't want the bird to come in right at the beginning of the panel, I can hold start. Let me put this back to 0. And then if I want to hold the start position, you can see from when I'm scrubbing that his start position is outside of the frame. So if I want to hold that for 8 frames, for example, I can click on hold start, and I can either type the number 8 here, or I can use these dials. And now watch as I play selected, he's not going to fly in right at the beginning. If you'll notice down here in the timeline, he won't actually start flying in until 8 frames have passed. And the same works if you wanted him to stop and hover for some reason. You could hold the end position. So this is good for having a character walk in and then walk out of a scene if you want them to wait a moment during your animatic so the character just doesn't come in automatically and in a mechanical way.